Now we are recording. Okay, so just a little bit of background on who I am. So my name is Nersa. I am currently a branch manager at a global logistics company. I am situated in Durban. I basically run the branch in Durban, and we have about 17 branches nationally. So my role and responsibility in the organization is basically to run commercial, so from a sales as well as a retention or a growth perspective. So that's a revenue drive. Operations management, so just making sure that there's optimization in logistics. So whether it is route optimization or cost saving drives, how can we best save on fuel management or overtime, etc. Credit control, customer service, basically everything that runs the supply chain of the business. Our organization as well features full supply chain, meaning freight, so air freight, road freight, sea freight. We don't do rail, unfortunately. So last mile courier services as well as warehousing, storage, logistics. So full supply chain. So whether a customer or a particular organization wants to import something, store it, and then pick, pack, assemble, and then deliver to a customer, we basically do all of that. Okay. From an education perspective, I currently have a double master's. So a master's in commerce in supply chain management from UKZN, as well as a NQF level 9 from Gordon Institute of Business Science, where I completed a IEDP for women. So it's an International Executive Development Program for women. TITA sponsored quite a grueling course or module where it's featured mainly within the transport sector or women in transport, and basically just understanding transport systems and how as a leader you can contribute towards the betterment of transport in South Africa. So that's basically me in a nutshell. This is my second year that I'm doing this module. So I started at Varsity College last year, first semester. So already did this module as well as the first year logistics, supply chain and operations management module. So I am a little bit more clued up than I was last year. So good news for you guys. So just to take you through some of our dues this semester or reminders. So firstly, there's a WhatsApp group. Please use the group. I use the group quite a bit if I have to send out reminders for when tasks are due or assignments are due. So please just look up at that, just acknowledge it, thumbs up, whatever, you don't have to really say anything. But it's just an acknowledgement, or if I need to send something that's urgent or important to you guys, that's where I'll share that information. I do post a lot on announcements. I mean, previous to this, we had Blackboard. Now we have Arc. So we're all trying to navigate Arc because it is pretty new to everybody. So, I think just mind me or bear with me while we try and navigate it together. Sorry, something happened. Okay. Yes, so I will be posting a lot of announcements in ARC. So post our sessions. I will probably the next day will be posting the lecture slides as well as the recording on YouTube, and I'll share the YouTube link with you guys. So you just have an understanding. If you do miss a class, I do know that it's sometimes a bit difficult, especially if you are working, if you have full-time jobs, can be a little bit difficult to jump onto a lecture. I would urge you to join as many as possible because there is a few, especially when we have sight of when our assignments and stuff are due. I will try and post as much tips and guidelines as I possibly can. So just before an assignment is due, I normally use like the first 10 or 15 minutes of the week before's class, just to go through some tips or guidelines. I try my best to look at past papers that I have access to, and I try and pull out different concepts for you guys to basically understand, so it helps you when it comes to your assignment or your examination. The next one is academic integrity. Very, very important. I take this really seriously. I also did, two dissertations or thesis, so I understand how important referencing is. So please bear this in mind. If you are unsure of how to reference, please make sure you visit the IRE referencing guideline or visit the library, just so you have an understanding of how it works. If you do have major referencing errors, there is a penalty. Even if it's minor referencing errors, there is a penalty that's involved. So please make sure as much as possible that you are referencing it correctly as possible. The next one is submissions of assignments. Due dates are very important. It's there for a reason. Please make sure that you post or submit your assignments before your due date. Anything that's submitted after the due date, there will be a penalty. So 24 hours sort of after your due date, I think it's 15% if I'm not mistaken. And 24 hours after that, unfortunately, you end up with a 0. I had in the past signed off zeros because obviously students just did not meet the due dates. So please make sure that you are submitting your assignments on time. The prescribed textbook, please make sure that you get this textbook. It is very important. This is not a module that you can chat GPT your way around. So please make sure that you get this textbook and learn and understand from the textbook. When you do distance learning or distance studying, it is very difficult in our lessons to cover everything. So you just need to make sure that you are going through the textbook on your own, so you can understand different concepts. I try my best to cover as much as possible in the lecture, but sometimes it's not always easy due to the time frames. So please just make sure that you do that. While I'm on the topic of prescribed textbook, I did have a student from last year reach out to me to say that they do have a copy of the textbook, and that they want to sell. So first come, first serve. Please just reach out to me if you don't have the textbook, and I will put you in contact with that student, and you can, just agree on what the price is, and you can, maybe do a purchase from that particular student. The last one is announcements. I will post as much as possible via ARC. You would have seen I probably already have like 2 announcements there. After this session, I'll have probably another 2 or 3 announcements. So just keep a lookout for that, and we can, we'll just communicate via WhatsApp, via email, via announcements or the chat box on ARC. Whatever's more comfortable for you, we can run with that. Is there any questions so far? Take it as that's a no. Before we continue here, I just want to run through or share the PACER, just so you have an understanding. So you're not surprised when you see this being posted. Okay, so this is this is a wrong PACER that I have. Nope, it's the right one. It's just titled wrong. I will fix that. Okay, so basically you have 4 ICE tasks for this semester. It is mandatory that you complete the ICE tasks. The ICE tasks contribute to 10% of your CAS mark. I have provided indicative dates below in the PACER. So please make sure that you complete this because it does contribute to your CAS. There is 2 assignments due for this particular module. The first one is your Learning Unit 1 to 3, excluding Theme 3. And your assignment 2 is Learning Unit 1 to 4, excluding Theme 3. And then you have a scene examination or closed book. And I know this is sometimes a little bit difficult to understand. Basically, what it means is it's a closed book examination. You are not allowed to take your textbook or anything else in there. However, a case study is shared with you prior to the examination. So you are able to look at the case study, understand the case study before you actually get seated in the examination room. Obviously, further down in the semester, as we progress through the module, I will share a little bit more information with you. But right now, this is what a scene examination closed book means. So you would not be able to take your textbook. You can just look at your case study prior to the examination. Okay. So this is basically what your pacer looks like. It is obviously starting today, what we're going to go through. And then your ICE task due dates are here. And also I've put here an NSS revision because we have a lecture every single day, every single week, sorry. We can cover a little bit more. So I do have room to put it in basically national support sessions or academic support sessions. And I try and squeeze this in a week at least before an assignment. If there's a lot more that I can cover in that session, I try and do that. However, it's just there so that we can run some revision post a learning unit. So you will see here, I put it on the 27th of March because we obviously are concluding everything that we need for the assignment 1. Then I just run through everything that I think is important for assignment 1 that you need to be focusing on. And then I do another one sort of pre-examination with everything that you need to focus on. So you have the assignment nailed down to a T, examination nailed down to a T. I'm not going to obviously go through all of the learning units and the themes. That is something you can look at from your MO. PASS is not yet released. I checked today, so there is no dates of your assignments that's due as yet. I'm not sure if it came out after lunch today, but before lunch is when I checked it. So once the dates are released, I will then update this pacer with the dates here. Once the dates are updated, then I can then move around the ICE tasks. The reason is I do not want you to be focusing too much on an ICE task and less on an assignment. I would rather you focus more on assignment because it contributes more towards your CAS. So I will play around with the ICE task dates that works around your assignment. How I normally feature ICE tasks is I try and do a case study and an application-based ICE task just so that it helps you with an assignment or with your examination. So a lot of times supply chain management is understanding what a concept means. Using a case study, you need to now apply those concepts in your answer. So application, very important. Understanding theory, very important. Okay, so those are two main things. A lot of times what happens is you'll get a question, it'll ask you to list theory for 5 marks, but there's 10 marks in application. So just understand how you need to apply. And when we run through NSS or academic support sessions, I'll be able to show you ways of how you can do application. Right. Okay, I think that basically covers the pacer. Is there any questions with regards to the pacer before I stop sharing it? Okay.
None, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Nice to hear someone's voice. Thank you. Let me go to your presentation. Okay. All right. So basically, I just want to set the scene in terms of what is supply chain management, because I'm pretty sure a lot of you have not probably had view of what supply chain is or logistics is, and maybe you've obviously chosen this maybe as an elective, just to understand a little bit more about supply chain and logistics. Coming from the logistics environment or the supply chain environment, no 2 days are the same, which is great, if you want to work a lot. But it's something that, a lot of us look at in terms of, how everyday life operates, whether it's how a retail industry functions or how hospitality functions. that is how supply chain basically works. So when we ask the question about what is supply chain, it's basically the flow of goods or data or services related to a particular product, whether it means procuring a raw material from somebody and then going through the full manufacturing process to get a final finished product and then deliver that product to a final destination. So a lot of times people equate supply chain management with the logistics, but logistics is actually just one component of supply chain management. So supply chain management may have procurement, it can have logistics, it can have operations management. There's various facets that's now featured in part of supply chain management. So it's quite a broad-based topic. And then if you want to go into it a little bit more deeper, you have to go into the various facets. As I mentioned, logistics, procurement, ops management, warehousing, distribution. Those are all the different facets, part of supply chain. So obviously today in like sort of more digital and automation, today's society, there's a lot of AI that's involved, automation that's involved with supply chain management, whether it's order fulfillment in terms of if you are, let's say you import a finished product and you're now warehousing it in South Africa and you're going to distribute it to the man on the street, like the final customer. Prior to automation, everything was very manual based, meaning that if you were, let's say, in the fashion or textile industry and you were doing apparel, so clothing, you would do, for instance, if you have a black t-shirt, you'll have a black t-shirt in small, medium, large, extra large, double XL. So that's 5 different SKUs for one t-shirt. If you had a white t-shirt, exact same thing, another 5 different SKUs. So you can imagine that order fulfillment or checking inventory levels or doing stock takes can be quite cumbersome. You need like 10 casual laborers with probably, a 50% error rate to basically do a stock take. Whereas now automation is there. You've got every item is barcoded, you don't scan every item. When an item arrives into your facility, you're scanning it in. When it leaves a facility, you're scanning it out. So you know exactly what's going in and out because of automation. So those sort of things, data integrity, information tracking, all of that has really taken supply chain to a whole nother level. That makes it, a little bit easier for businesses to, track where their finances or the money is sitting in, or where the money is sitting in stock, or whether the money is sitting in logistics, or, whether it's sitting in raw materials. So it makes it a little bit easier to understand. So that's basically supply chain management. Then we look at what is strategic management. So strategic management is basically using company resources to reach a goal or reach an objective. So it's basically evaluating what your internal processes are that can impact how your business actually functions. So companies of various, different industries or of all different sizes can benefit from strategic management, basically. So a lot of it has to do with giving businesses an advantage over their competitors, so a competitive advantage, because you're now aware of what your environment is or the market is out there. It allows for a lot of times, requires you to set an objective for your organization. You need to understand who your competitors are in the market. You need to know how your internal structure works. So how your operations team is running, how your sales team is running, your finance team is running, procurement. Evaluate all of their current goals or strategies or KPIs that they have. And then confirming that those strategies are then implemented, into the whole company. Whether it's, a company, an organization today, in today's day and age, needs to have a one goal, one vision, and there needs to be a strategy that's driving it. If you don't have a strategy driving the organization. Unfortunately, it's everybody just running around like headless chickens, just trying to make something work that you don't have an end goal towards. So that's what strategic management is basically. You want to develop as much strategy as possible, in advance so that you don't have an organizational issue. So, I mean, part of strategic management, and I want to go through, some of the concepts which I've already mentioned here, but from how strategic management and supply chain is sort of interlinked, you'll see a lot of these keywords being used throughout the semester: efficiency, cost effectiveness, optimization. Those are sort of the keywords of how supply chain management operates within an organization that basically evolves into the strategy of the business. Every business wants to make more profit, so improve their profitability. They want to increase their cash flow as much as possible, and they want to make an impact on their balance sheet. So those are basically how strategic management and supply chain management interlinks with each other. You want as much optimization as possible so you can make as much money as possible. Okay. Then we move on to the 5 stages of strategic management. And if you are in business or if you are in an organization, this a lot of times is what businesses use. I know in the organization that I'm part of, I use this a lot, especially when I'm trying to develop a strategy for the new year for my particular branch or my particular, let's say, sales team, for instance. Firstly, you need to identify or, I assess the business current direction. So where are we right now? We're in an identification stage. We need to understand, what's where we want to be. So it often involves understanding the company's goal, what's your mission, what's your vision, and also overall, what's your direction. So what is your current process and what do you need to get you to where you need to? What do you need to do in order to get to where you need to be? So that's the first step. The second step is an analysis stage. So SWOT analysis, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard of SWOT analysis. So once you start understanding where you are currently within your process, you need to analyze the details of it. So what is working? What is not working? What input do you need from, maybe it is your exco team or your board of directors or your shareholders, so you can gather as much information from them and then help solidify some of your elements, of your strategic plan. So SWOT analysis, it means your strengths, your weaknesses, which is basically internal. You're internalizing what you as an organization is strong at or you as an organization is weak at. Opportunities and threats, which is from an external environment perspective. So what is the opportunities out there in the market or the industries? And also, what are the threats out there? It may be your competitor is offering something at a lower price than you, or your competitor is offering something as an add-on to the current package that they're offering. So it's understanding from that perspective, what are the threats and what are the opportunities in the market. The third one is formulating an action plan. So once you have the information that you need, it's time to now create an action plan. And the action plan needs to be created in accordance to what goal you want to achieve at the end. So you just need to make sure that your steps are clear, it's focused, and it's also directly linked to what your end goal is supposed to be. So you need to prepare sort of implementation guidelines so that you can implement this process or this procedure that will impact basically every person in your organization. Fourth stage is executing your action plan. So you need to follow your steps in your strategic plan to make sure that all your stakeholders, whether it's people from the highest level in your organization right down to, your cleaner or, your tea lady, that needs to understand what is the strategy of the organization and how it's now implemented, because you need maximum efficiency from your strategy. And then the last one is evaluation. So you need to understand to what degree your action plan has been successful. So did you achieve your goal? Was the process implemented appropriately throughout the organization? And then based on these answers, to the questions that you're asking, you need to now reflect and you need to revise. And then on to the next one. So it sounds like it's fairly simple, which most times it is fairly simple, but yeah, you can deviate a lot from the plan. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work because not everybody is for the plan, but most times this works. So I just want to share a little bit of an example, and I think examples help, especially if it's like sort of like real life examples, because it puts things into perspective and it makes you understand a little bit more. So I managed to pull out this example of a furniture company preparing to introduce a new line of kitchen tables to their organization. They decided to implement the strategic management sort of concept, so the 5 stages, to ensure that the product release goes smoothly, efficiently, and it's consistent across all of their retail locations. So first, that was their first stage, is they needed to understand their current direction. Second stage is the analysis stage. So in the past, this organization had basically not done marketing very consistently, and they were charging incorrect shipping costs. So for instance, if somebody had ordered, they would charge basically like a flat rate for a chair. When it weighed 50 kgs, they would charge a customer for 10 kgs, which means they were basically out of pocket for 40 kgs of shipping costs, which is a lot for the business. If you're not budgeted for, it can really impact your cash flow. So basically, before the release of the new table, they decided to run a SWOT analysis to see how they can improve their process a lot better. So some of the strengths was, their quality was next level compared to their competitors. They also had a lot more locations, so that they reached a lot more of the market. And they had a flat shipping rate. So that's what they saw as their strength. Some of their weaknesses is they had poor communication between the store managers and the employees. They also had the shipping rate applied basically multiple times at some stores. So the shipping rate was not very consistent in certain stores. And they also didn't have a good marketing strategy. The opportunity was a unified marketing strategy, and also transparent fees. What they pay for is what they get, and they were very transparent to their customer of what their pricing is. And their threat was basically their main competitor released a line of kitchen tables in the last quarter. So big competition in the market. The third one is, how do they formulate a action plan? So firstly, using their SWOT analysis of their strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats, they created a plan to release their kitchen table. Basically, it involved having consistent marketing, both whether it's printed or whether it's in the digital era, to all of their retail locations as well as social media. It also includes sending basically a representative to every one of their retail location to explain correctly how to apply a shipping rate to all of the purchases. So if someone had to walk into their store, obviously we all walk into a furniture store with a normal size human vehicle and not a truck. We can't always transport this in our vehicles. So you now need shipping rates to transport it to your location or your home. So it's now having, training the staff to cost this correctly. And lastly, the support team set up like an internal messaging system, so the store managers can communicate, quite quickly to their teams about any challenges or any successes or, in their particular store. Then the fourth one was executing an action plan. So 1 month basically before the kitchen tables are released, the marketing team provides the marketing, material, etc., to every store. every store is given the same guideline on how to implement the marketing items. 2 weeks then before the launch, the managers are trained on the new messaging system. The trainers sort of field any questions. They make sure that the manager has everything from a messaging side set up on their office computer, whether it's their cell phone, so that it's accessible at all times. And then 1 week before the launch, somebody goes and trains the employees about shipping and having transparency and all of that. And the managers are all present during, every step of the way. And then the last one is evaluation. So they basically review the data from their kitchen table release 1 month after the first day of sales. They found that the marketing plan basically drove customers to the retail store that was closest to them so that they could see that the tables in person. The internal messaging system was very underutilized by a lot of the managers, and that is all down to discipline, many of whom basically did not like the customers seeing them on their cell phones while they were on the floor, etc. So there was, legitimate reasons for why this was not used. And there was no issues with shipping during the time of their release. So the strategic managers basically take this data and they use it so that they can plan their next new product release or launch. So this is how an organization, uses something like strategic management in the 5 stages to take their business forward when they have new product releases or new processes that they now want to release. And a lot of times you see it in the industry. A lot of organizations don't do that. They don't take a step back to understand what worked and what didn't work before they can introduce a new process or product. They just basically use sort of knee-jerk decisions, and they just throw out a launch of a particular product without testing the water first on what can go wrong, basically. Okay. Then we have quarter strategy. Okay, so you'll see that there's a lot of strategies that's now coming into play. So just remember some of these because it's stuff that you can actually use. It's not like algebra or trigonometry, which you never use in the real world or in in the workplace. But these sort of strategies actually help you, especially if you're in a corporate organization or even in the retail industry or selling to a retailer. This 100% helps you when you are looking at things differently. So basically, this is called Porter's generic competitive strategy. So it's basically a strategy used when you are competing, right, in the industry or in the market. So there's 2 basic types of competitive advantage that a firm or an organization can possess, and it's differentiation. So when I say cost, I mean low cost, and then there's differentiation. And the 2 basic types, that the organization uses, which I mentioned, it leads to basically 3 different, generic strategies. So whether it's cost leadership, differentiation, as well as focus, all right? So the first one, from a cost leadership perspective, a firm basically sets out to become the lowest cost producer in its industry. So you want to be someone who has economies of scale, meaning that you are producing mass or bulk so you get lower cost per item, basically. You also want to have, preferential access to raw materials from different suppliers. So a lot of times what businesses do, because they do find that importing, even when you import, your landed cost of raw materials still works out cheaper than getting raw materials from a local supplier. So even if it means visiting international or basically international global suppliers, let's say you're in the retail industry, you go to China and you now test the waters in terms of fabrics, zips or dyes or whatever it may be from a raw material perspective. You go find different suppliers, you test it out, and now you try and order in bulk, so you have a cheaper price, when you are importing. Obviously, shipping is a completely different question and different cost, and it changes every single day. But you can work out what your landed cost is going to be. And having that relationship with a preferential supplier is always a cost advantage. So you can try and exploit basically as much as possible when it comes to having a cost advantage. And you can basically sustain your cost leadership by having the lowest price if you follow certain categories. With the differentiation strategy is basically when an organization's main aim is to be as unique as possible in the industry. There's many attributes to this. You can try and do something where you're a premium brand at with uniqueness at a premium price. So you need to make a decision. Either you are low cost or you high cost and completely unique. So you can be low cost and generic and high cost and unique. So that's where your competitiveness or part strategy for competition basically comes into play. And then the last one is focus. So the generic strategy of focus basically sits on the choice of you have different segmentation of groups. So you need to be able to tailor a strategy that serves the exclusion of the two. So between cost differentiation and cost leadership and differentiation, focus basically focuses on the exclusion of others. And that's basically your Porter strategy. And a lot of times people use Porter strategy to understand basically which quadrant you're sitting at. Are you now sitting at a quadrant where you are higher cost leadership and lower on, focus, maybe cost focus? Are you sitting on, higher differentiation and probably lower on differentiation focus. So it's understanding where you're sitting at from between a scope and a competitive advantage. And that's where you need to now make your decision. So yes, that's your Porter's strategies. Then we're going on to shared value and a value chain. So basically shared value is where businesses basically create an economic value while they're addressing social needs and social challenges. So social challenges will be anything that has to do with from a community perspective. So anything that's out there outside of your organization. So whether it's CSR campaigns or you're creating value or your product is creating something that basically contributes to your society. And your value chain means you basically just a pure organization that has you basically bring a product to life, whether it's from conception right down through to delivery. So that's the difference between having a shared value, which is pretty self-explanatory if you look at it. So shared value is you creating a value for the community or society, and your value chain is the different links in a chain that brings a product to life, whether it's raw material to production, from production to warehousing, from warehousing to logistics, from logistics to delivery to your customer. So that's your entire link in your chain. So those are the two basically differentiation. And a lot of times this strategy is called Ruman's strategy. So it's shared value strategy and it's Ruman's strategy in terms of shared value. And I'm just touching on these concepts. I'll obviously expand more into it as we go through to the semester, but it's just so you can grasp a little bit of what's going on. Okay. So how do we now link strategy and supply chain management? So supply chain management, if we have to look at it as a competitive advantage, a lot of times we're looking at it with Porter's strategy. So whether it's cost leadership as well as differentiation. So an example here would be like Walmart. I mean, in our South African concept would be like a macro, for instance. You want to do something that gives you or makes you a cost leadership. So you are focusing on selling in bulk at a lower cost to the public. So that is basically linking strategy and supply chain management. And in this concept, it's competitive advantage with Porter's strategy. Then we have supply chain and customer value proposition. So here we had speed and basically responsiveness, as well as product quality and availability. So an example here in supply chain and customer value proposition is Zara, for instance. So Zara is a leading fashion retailer. It has ever-changing fashion, whether it's on a seasonal basis or whether it's just, from an international perspective, a new trend is now released, and then it comes, into, we'll use South Africa as an example. It comes to South Africa, but fashion is an ever-changing concept. So using that from a customer value proposition, it makes sense to Zara. And then the last one is supply chain for strategy execution. So here we have innovation. You want to have a new idea, generating new ideas so that you have as much optimization as possible, whether it's from a cost perspective or just becoming a leader in that specific industry. And also an expansion strategy. You want to expand into new markets and markets that you probably haven't been to before. How do you now execute that strategy and get into a market or expand into a particular market? An example here would be Apple, for instance. Apple constantly tries to get over Androids, or they are ever developing, whether it's an iPhone 14 or a 15. I don't know if a 16 is out yet, but it's ever changing and ever expanding. And the strategy for Apple, for instance, is next level. The new developments that they come out with every single new release, the expansions into markets, taking over certain markets that they haven't been to before. It's not only from a cell phone perspective, but whether it's a laptop side, whether it's an iPad side, it's now completely expanding their product value into new markets and an inexperienced market. So that's basically how we now linking strategy and supply chain management, and how we focus on market development and try and touch on as many organizations as possible, so you have an understanding of how those organizations are linked to supply chain and how strategy is linked to them. And basically, that's it. So I've provided my email address for those of you that don't have it already. Just if you have any questions or you need anything, just maybe pop me an email, and I can get back to you as soon as possible. But that's it for today. I know it's an overwhelming amount of information, so I always try and take the first session as easy as possible and as quick as possible, just so that you don't get very overwhelmed. And then in our next session, I try and introduce quizzes and multiple choices and those sort of things, so we can make it a little bit more fun and interactive. Is there any questions so far from anybody? Are we all good? Can I maybe get a thumbs up?
Is there anything that you would like us to prepare for next week as part of class prep?
I will share that by the end of this week, so by tomorrow, if there is anything. There's obviously activities and various activities on ARC, which I urge you guys to actually do, just so that you can brush yourself up on the learning units and the themes. But if there is any class content that I need you to cover prior to a session, I will give you an announcement with that information, and you can take it from there.
Thank you. Perfect.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. Have a good evening. I'll speak to you guys next week.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
All right. You too. Bye.